Welcome, everyone, to Buddhist Center. It's so wonderful we're here again. We've made it. We made it through another week. It's another Sunday, and we get to talk about Lama Tsongkhapa's Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment. And that's awesome. And we're at a cool place because we're done, as of today, at the end of class, we will be done with the section on the small scope. So we move next into the section on the medium scope. So it's been a year since Rinpoche passed, and we've talked a lot about the Lamrim, and it's pretty neat that right around the time of his passing, we finished his favorite section to tell us about. For his favorite section, I know, was the end of the Lamrim for his own personal practice. But to share with us, he emphasized so greatly, and in the transcripts that are right up there on the shelf from Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, he emphasized that teaching should in common with beings of small capacities so greatly that I'm just so happy that we've gone through them and looked at them again. And then we will look at them again and again if we all stay alive. That's one factor that's going to be necessary. We know this precious human life is amazing, and we have all these opportunities to study, and we have all the causes and conditions that we need in order to progress on the path as long as we stay alive. And we know that death can come and nothing can stop it. We don't know when that's going to be, and nothing at that time will help us but the Dharma. Nothing, will go along with us except the good things we've done and the bad things we've done, and the kind of the ways that we've habituated our mind will dictate how our mind thinks in the future. So, there's no time like now to practice the Dharma because of that fact that's so unfortunate about this Jambuvipa place, this southern continent that we live on, or in, or however you want to put it. Lifespan's not fixed. In other places, lifespan's fixed. You're going to live X amount of years, or, this many years for sure. But in this particular realm where we're hanging out for a short period of time, maximum maybe 120 years, if we make a Guinness Book of World Records or something, we don't, but it could be as short as, a few moments after conception in some sentient being's case. So however many moments since conception you've had, rejoice in the fact that you've had, in a human basis, because there's so many awful bases that you could be in that don't have the opportunities that you have. But then also, I think it's important to reflect on what have I done leading up to now to make sure that when death comes, that what will help me has been something I've implemented into my life, has been something that has really saturated my mind enough that it's going to make a difference. And then if there is this continuum of consciousness that we talk about, if consciousness is endless, have I done the things in this life so far that will make it so that endless consciousness will be better and better and better? Or am I taking steps backwards in terms of my future? And that's the thing that's so incredible about the stages of the path. At any moment, we can turn around what we're doing, because since beginningless time, we haven't really been doing it right. I mean, prove it, here we are. Since beginningless time, we've been kind of mixed up about things. And so if we were mixed up about things for 10 years of our life, 20 years of our life, 30 years of our life, 40 years of our life, whatever, 50 years of our life, no problem. It's okay, because since beginningless time, we've been quite mixed up. But right now, we have in front of us the stages of the path. We know exactly what we need to do. We've been given this teaching in an unerring way from Khenso Geshe Wandak, His Holiness the Dalai Lamas in the world, and all of these incredible beings are, putting, like Geshe Dorje Damdu says, spoon feeding us with this information that if we had only had the sutras and we're trying to extrapolate the meaning of just looking at a sutra and trying to figure out how would I go about practicing from where I am right now until becoming a Buddha, it would be quite difficult. But because of the kindness of the Nalanda Pandits, because of the kindness that one of those Pandits named Lord Atisha, showed us, we're able to know exactly how to practice. And we have a mirror of the Dharma that we can look at to know whether or not our practice is being fruitful, if it's, producing results that have some kind of lasting effect. And the way we can tell how we're going to be in our future lives in terms of our mind is look at your mind now. is to see if the Dharma's had lasting effect in your mind right now, because right now is what you really know you have control over, and you really can check, because who knows if you're thrust into a rebirth into an animal realm, well, you're not going to remember any of this stuff that I'm talking about, Rinpoche talked about, Dalai Lama talked about. It may be a faint, kind of distant kind of thing that's moving you a little bit, but the idea of looking at the mirror of the Dharma is a rarity. When we look at this human basis and we look at the difficulty of obtaining it and we look at how easily it is lost, the fact that we have this mirror right now to look at, to say, okay, is this affecting my mind? You know, have I seen beings who implemented these teachings that have been very affected? Would I like to be as affected as them? And then if you say, well, I have been as affected as them, and I want to, be more affected by the teachings, keep going. If you find that there's some sort of block or something going on that's, years are passing, and there isn't really any kind of change that's taking place, it might mean that there's just too many topics taking place and not enough focus on the beginning topics that really allow for that change to take place. So I'm happy today that we're all here, that we have the opportunity to look at the Dharma, that we, are not animals that are walking around, as we speak. I think one in the room, I'm not sure, that really doesn't have a clue, what I'm talking about right now. There's some imprints that are happening. We know that a bee circled a stupa on a piece of dung in a previous life, which then ripened into a being that, was able to be ordained in their 80s or something like that. Rinpoche would tell us the story. So we know that imprints are very important, but right now we can get more than just some imprints. We can get more than just saying some prayers. We can really cognitively change the way that we operate. So let's start doing some things that would change the way cognitively that we operate and put some Dharma into our minds. And so let's get into the 7-point Vairocana posture, which we know the benefits of from many of the teachings that we've heard before. Just from looking at any of the great Lam Rim texts, the larger ones, we see this posture being presented as a way to really start to be able to, have the body as a support for clarity of mind. So get into the 7-point Vairocana posture, and we're going to begin breathing in and out, counting the breath. And we're, as we always do, going to have the front generation form of Buddha Shakyamuni about an arm length away, about the size of our thumb, eye height in our minds. And we're going to try to only focus on the breathing in and out and the counting and Buddha Shakyamuni in the front generation. So this is a meditation where we're practicing what will eventually ripen into shamatha, into calm abiding. And we know that we have to have calm abiding and get our minds calm enough to be able to see emptiness. And we know that we have to see emptiness in order to have freedom, because the only liberating path is the wisdom that realizes the correct nature of reality. And then we know that we also have to couple that with the ripening paths of the purifications and the accumulations of merit and getting all these imprints that we need. And then also the ripening path of renunciation and bodhicitta. But that wisdom we're going to need is going to require us to have a very calm mind. And also, if we want to have the realizations of like bodhicitta, we will have to have shamatha. We will have to have a mind calm enough that could day and night seek transcendent liberation. That in terms of Buddhahood, a day and night seeking Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. So we're going to begin in this posture, breathing in and out, counting the exhale, and having as well as we can the front generation form of Buddha Shakyamuni. So let's try to push everything out of our minds that isn't those 4 things, that aren't those 4 things, and just try to get centered, and then we'll go from there. We are so fortunate right now to know who Buddha Shakyamuni is. 2,600 years ago, a being came out of love and compassion to turn the wheel of Dharma and presented us with the truth. This truth allows us to get rid of all of our suffering. This truth allows us to have complete happiness. We have the potential to achieve the same exact realization as Buddha Shakyamuni of perfect wisdom, perfect love, perfect compassion, perfect power, perfect skillful means. We can do it right now from this human basis. We just need to start working. We need to start meditating more, studying more. If we want to get rid of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience, we have to figure out exactly what the techniques are to do that. We're so fortunate that Buddha Shakyamuni came and laid that path out before us, and that the Nalanda Pandits came and showed us more about how to understand those pathways. And all the great masters in the Tibetan tradition came to show us all of these incredible techniques. We have Buddha nature. Everyone will become a Buddha. No sentient being will not achieve the state of Buddhahood. Every sentient being will achieve Buddhahood. Our mind is in the nature of clear light and unsullied. The defilements that it has right now are adventitious, they're added. They're not something that are of the nature of our mind. Our mind is empty of intrinsic existence, just like the Buddha's mind is empty of intrinsic existence. Therefore, it can mature. That maturing mind is empty of intrinsic existence. And that's the natural bodhicitta, the natural Buddha nature that we all possess. The emptiness of the proliferating Buddha nature or maturing Buddha nature, the emptiness of that potential makes the potential possible. We're so fortunate. Now we'll first just imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni becomes quite animated and is so happy to see all of us. Take a sigh of relief that we've been able to meet with the teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni. Buddha said that when I pass on, the words are the teacher. My words are your teacher. We have those words. We have beings who understand those words. We're so fortunate. Imagine Buddha Shakyamuni there smiling and so happy. And now we'll recite a prayer that recently the Nejong Oracle said is important for us to recite a lot, along with Om Mani Padme Hum mantras and some other advices. But this is called the Drumbeat of Truth. It's a supplication to Buddha Shakyamuni. It was written by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. And it's a beautiful prayer. We have Buddha Shakyamuni here with us right now, in front of us, smiling, radiant, animated now, not in a static position. And let's now make this supplication prayer to Buddha Shakyamuni, and then we'll go from there. The Drumbeat of Truth, supplication to Shakyamuni Buddha by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. I bow to you, the liberator, Lion of the Shakyas, who perfected all ultimate qualities of omniscience and compassion, who has been praised as the white lotus, the protector of all beings, who dispels all suffering through the teachings of dependent rising. As you prophesied and foretold through your glorious speech that your teachings would spread in a northerly direction, the entirety of the teachings of the conqueror spread throughout the land of the snows, becoming an ornament and a sign of good fortune for the world. However, due to the force of unwholesome deeds, today the teachings of the conqueror have declined. O greatly compassionate one, the time has come to bestow protection with compassion. The environment and beings spent and drained through unending suffering are on the brink of extinction. Thus, the entire human and celestial population of this land of the snows is drawn together out of intense faith, solidarity, and altruism to offer this ornamental crown protrusion of refined gold, this supreme alms bowl of a sage, and these fine saffron robes. Whatever extensive collection of merit and wisdom results from these offerings, as well as all the heaps of virtue of the 3 times, I dedicate to the conqueror's teaching, the source of all peace and happiness for all beings, including the celestials. So the teachings will not decline, but will abide for a very long time. For all sentient beings within the expanse of space, and in particular, all beings of this continent called Jambudvipa, May loving and compassionate thoughts and deeds prosper, and violent conflict cease forever. Having dispelled all inner and outer obstacles and downfalls such as poverty, despair, oppression, cruelty, epidemics, and natural disasters due to environmental degradation. May all beings forever enjoy the glory of peace and happiness, inseparable from the precious radiance of appreciating others' good qualities, mutually recognizing mutually close ties and friendship, and maintaining an unbiased attitude towards all who follow Buddhist and non-Buddhist traditions. May I voluntarily enact deeds solely for the benefit of all sentient beings. Especially in the refreshingly cool land, may the degenerated teachings of the conqueror be restored, and prosper without decline. And with the renewed peace and joy of spiritual and temporal freedom, may the immediate and long-term aspirations of the Tibetan people be quickly fulfilled. May all those individuals whose service has contributed to keeping the banner of spiritual and temporal deeds aloft in the land of snows continue to shoulder their responsibility with a dedicated spirit and an informed mind. May they be looked after in life after life by the holder of the lotus. In the realm of the Dharma, may the heaps of irreligious deeds be dispelled by the truth of all positive, temporal, and spiritual activities which are altruistically motivated, be quickly fulfilled in accord with the Dharma. By the truth of the Dharma, may everything sacrilegious come to an end. Now imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni has been containing the entire merit field. Imagine that we see an explosion like fireworks in the space in front of us, and those fireworks create the beautiful beings, all the holy gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas. Imagine that they're all there in the space, and come on, Kala, all there in the space in front of us. Imagining a Buddha Shakyamuni still there, right at the center. Imagining His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Khyentse Geshe Wandak, so smiling and radiant. We were so fortunate to meet with a true Bodhisattva, a Bodhisattva Arya, who was so kind to us to present these stages of the path to us in such a clear and concise way that we know how to practice them in our daily lives. So see His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Khyentse Geshe Wandak and Geshe Lobsang Gompo and Gen Gyatso, and imagining the Demolocho Rinpoche and Geshe Dorje Damdu, imagining him right there, so happy that we're engaging in practices which will allow us to have fearlessness and infinite happiness. Imagining Geshe Dorje Damdu there, Geshe Mala Tenzin Ladrin, Geshe Aga Umzila, who's been so kind to us throughout these stages after Rinpoche's passing. Imagining all these holy beings like Chado Rinpoche and Thupten Chodron and Lama Alan Wallace and Jeffrey Hopkins, all these beings who cared so much about the Dharma that they've devoted their lives to it and have shined a light on the meaning of the Dharma for us all to see. Imagine the beings of the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Maitreya and Asanga, and Vasubandhu and Dharmakirti and Dignaga and Vimuktasena and Haribhadra and Shakyaprabha and Gunaprabha, imagining Lama Salimpa, all these holy beings in the space in front of you, Lama Tisha. We're so fortunate to be connected to these beings who've taught the grounds and paths and logic and taught us about how to understand all the different topics of the Abhisamalankara and how to understand what the meaning of ethics really is. Now imagine all the beings of the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri and Nagarjuna and Buddha Palita and Arya Deva and Chandrakirti and Shanti Deva, all these incredible beings. Imagining Chandarashita and Baba Vega, Kamala Shila, and again remembering Lama Atisha, who combined all of these lineages together. Imagine the beings of the lineage of practicing blessings passed down. Lord Vajradhara, right there in the space in front of us. Saraha and Matripa, Talopa and Naropa, Lotsawa Marpa, Milarepa, Gampopa, all these beings in the space in front of us. We're so fortunate that we've connected to these beings and that we have a path that will allow us to get rid of all of our fear and will make it so that we have infinite happiness forever. Samsara has an end and no beginning. Nirvana has a beginning and no end. And we know how to achieve an abiding and a non-abiding nirvana because of the kindness of beings like Lama Atisha and all of the Nalanda Pandits and Buddha Shakyamuni. We're so fortunate. Imagine Drong Tompa, one of Atisha's root disciples, that incredible lay Lama who held the entire lineage of the Lam Rim. in his heart, incredible. And the three Kadampa lineages, all the holy beings of the Nyingma, Sakya, Kagyu, and Galup order, Padmasambhava, Sakya Pandita, the Karmapas, Lama Tsongkhapa, and Lama Tsongkhapa's spiritual sons like Kirtub J and Jelsep J, and those holy beings like Panchen Sonandrapa, Gonchu Jimmy Wombo, Janja Rupi Dorje, Jayan Sheba, the seventh Dalai Lama. We're so fortunate that we have these beings like Basu Chuji Jetsun. Rinpoche connected us with so many of these teachers so that we could truly understand the nature of reality. Imagine the beings of the highest Yoga Tantra, Yogic Tantra, Performance Tantra, and Action Tantra, all of those incredible deities. Many of us have been initiated into those practices, and we know that we have to, at the final stages of our path to Buddhahood, engage in the practices of Vajrayana, and we've been connected to those teachings that are so rare and won't always be in the world. Imagine the 35 Buddhas with all of their power of purification in terms of basis. We can just make one prostration to Buddha Shakyamuni in terms of the 35 Buddhas and get rid of eons of non-virtue. Because of the kindness of our lamas, we know this and we have these methods. Imagining the protector deities of the small, medium, and great scope. Imagining Palden Lama, who Rinpoche said is our protector. That wrathful emanation of Tara that out of great love and compassion will do anything to protect us. Now, we recognize why we're here today. We know that we came to Buddhism because we have some sort of dissatisfaction. We have some sort of dislike for the 8 types of suffering, 6 types of suffering, 3 types of suffering. And we have clarity around what those sufferings are because of Lama Tsongkhapa's Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment, where it's elucidated so clearly in the medium scope section. And we know that in order to get rid of all of those types of suffering, all of that uncertainty, all that insatiability, all of that being thrust over and over and over again into bodies and aggregates, any among the 5 aggregates that are contaminated, that will have to be shucked off and eventually will take on another form. And who knows what that is? And that lack of freedom is misery, the Buddha said. And we know that the origin of our suffering is the self-grasping ignorance. So we have to figure out a way to get rid of that self-grasping ignorance. We have to understand the nature of reality. By understanding the nature of reality, we put a stop to the inappropriate attention that creates the afflictions, the contaminated karmas, and creates samsara. So if we can get rid of that self-grasping ignorance, if we can figure out what the nature of reality is, and we can truly get our minds calm enough to only focus on that nature of reality, we can actually cut the root of cyclic existence. And it's our ignorance which binds us. And eventually we will wake up. The word sangje, woken up, open, woken up omniscient. A Buddha is a being who's woken up from the sleep of ignorance, and eventually we will wake up from the sleep of ignorance. A Buddha has complete fearlessness and complete bliss, and eventually we will have complete fearlessness and complete bliss. We know that we have so many people we care about, and all of those beings also have all of the different types of suffering that we've learned about in the medium scope section of the Lam Rim. They all have to endure the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death, the suffering of separating from what is pleasant, meeting with the unpleasant, not getting what they want, and the suffering of appropriated aggregates. We look around and we see that there is no one among us who isn't enlightened or isn't just posing as an unenlightened being that doesn't have these types of suffering or won't have these types of suffering again in the future. And all of these beings who have these types of suffering have them for the same reason that we have suffering, and that's the self-grasping ignorance that gives rise to inappropriate attention and things like the self-cherishing attitude, which eventually even the imprints of must be removed for us to have bliss. We recognize that we must cherish others in order to achieve all of our own aims and all of sentient beings' aims. We know that just an individual liberation, just wanting to seek liberation for ourselves alone, is a selfish pattern thought behavior that will only lead us to a nirvana where we abide and we stay, and we really won't be of benefit to all sentient beings. So we know that we must learn the ways of the Bodhisattva. We must learn what the Buddha said we have to learn in order to experience the bliss side of the fearlessness and bliss. So now we say, oh, like myself, all sentient beings want happiness and the causes of happiness. Like myself, all sentient beings want to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. Since beginningless time, I've had innumerable relationships with all sentient beings. Every single sentient being has taken care of me in my most vulnerable time. I've just forgotten it. So those people that I feel so close to right now, I've had every kind of relationship with, and those people who I call enemies or strangers, now I was as close to as I am as close to the closest person in my life. So we start to see this equal thought that we have for everyone, and this equal desire to see everybody to have the things that we want, happiness and freedom from suffering. And we know that in order for us to achieve the complete goal, our complete goal, which is fearlessness and infinite happiness, we have to put others' needs before our own. We've seen this so clearly in all of the teachings on the Bodhisattva practices. When we look at the 7-point cause and effect instruction for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment and equalizing and exchanging self with others instruction, we find this need to really love and care for and wish so much that sentient beings didn't have to suffer. We find this necessity in the teachings that we have to realize. We have to be able to put others' needs before our own. Right now, we're not able to truly do that, but in a contrived way, we can start to saturate our mind with techniques that will turn our minds from this mind that's so obsessed with ourselves into a mind that really just day and night wants everyone to have the happiness we want, wants everyone to have freedom from suffering that we want. And the only way that we'll start to develop a mind that's that pure is to start. And the way we can start is doing it in contrived ways. So now we just imagine that we're bringing all sentient beings here. We have the entire merit field in front of us, and all sentient beings can be brought here. And this is the bodhicitta field. So we imagine that we bring all the hell beings, all the hungry ghost beings, all the animals, all the humans, all the demigods, all the gods, bringing them all here. We can think about all their varying types of suffering and their varying types of delusion that they have, thinking that they're not suffering. And we can imagine that we're turning off the sufferings and the deluded states of mind where they think they're not suffering just for a moment. And we're imagining that they're here and they have their full attention. They have none of the faults of the 3 pots, just like us. We're setting our motivation to not have the fault of having a pot that's turned upside down that can't allow anything to go in it because we're not listening. We don't have the fault of the pot that has a hole in it that leaks. So we're forgetting everything that's being said. And we don't have the kind of pot that's so contaminated, that's coming in here with all these preconceived notions, all these ideas, maybe just checking, is this all in the right order or not? And we're not even really listening to what can change our minds. We have to make sure we don't have a contaminated pot, a leaky pot, or a pot that can't have anything put in it. And we imagine that we are that being that doesn't have any of the faults of the 3 pots, and all the beings that we bring here have that same state of mind. And it's so easy to have those faults. It's so easy to be so distracted. You could be distracted by thinking there's nothing wrong, or be distracted by everything's all too wrong. And all of those things cause us not to truly hear the teaching. So imagine that everyone who's here isn't in that condition. Imagine that we're all here and we're here to hear the teachings and be able to have them penetrate our minds so that on a daily basis, whatever realm they're in, if they're in a God's realm or if they're in a hell realm, in a daily basis, some kind of flicker of light, some flicker of hope happens in these beings' minds. And we know that Buddha Shakyamuni achieved bodhicitta in hell. So we bring all these beings here. Now imagine that now we're all here, all of our loved ones, because all sentient beings are our loved ones. If we look at beginningless time, and we look at being more realistic and not so ignorant, we look at what someone who's woken up would think, they would think like that. They would think that all of these people are the people that I love and they're all here. You know, some of them look like snakes and worms. Some of them have multiple heads maybe, but they're all beings that I love and have loved in every kind of way imaginable. So with that in mind, let's make a 7-limb prayer offering. We know the 7 limbs are so important. We find this in the sutra teachings. We find it in the tantra teachings. The 7-limb prayer is of just paramount importance in terms of accumulating merit and also in terms of self-reflection. When we're first starting to pay homage, we're recognizing that This is a reliable guide. This is a reliable field. This merit field is reliable. They're worthy of my homage, my physical, my mental, my verbal homage. This field is worthy of that because I've studied so well and I know the differentiation between teacher with a capital T and teacher. I can differentiate between who is the most reliable guide and who isn't. And we know that the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas are teaching us, are transmitting reliability to us, what we can rely upon. So we make this the first part of the 7-limb prayer, making prostrations, and then making offerings, because we know that on the Bodhisattva path, we have to engage in generosity. And who would be the most worthy of our offerings and offering the most beautiful things in the universe to? Who would be the most worthy? It would be beings who are the most reliable guides in the universe. And they don't need these offerings. It's for us to establish even more that they are the reliable guides. By in our minds, imagining all these incredible offerings, we're making our faith more solid. We're making it stronger. We're showing our love in other ways. You know, when you bring someone flowers and you both feel that way, you feel that, oh, that sense of that's so wonderful, or a box of chocolates or something like that. You know how you feel when you're doing it, and you create that feeling towards the entire merit field as a field that is just so worthy of all of your gifts and all of these offerings that you would make. And now then you get to the next limb, the 3rd limb of confession. And you're confessing, you're bringing the merit field here as witnesses to this confession. And you're doing so because you want help with the things that you're saying you did wrong, because you know the things that you did wrong will cause you suffering in the future. So you're asking for help. Hey, and you're making commitments, and you know that these beings are so kind. So this commitment, this kind of that you're making, this damsik, this connection with them, makes it your mind more apt to follow through with goodness, instead of the things that you're saying, wow, I've done this again, I don't want to do this anymore. So the next limb of confession. Then the limb of rejoicing in the fact that we're here in front of the merit field, rejoicing in the fact that we just brought all sentient beings here. Imagine that when you're doing these prayers, all the beings are rejoicing, all the beings are confessing, all the beings are making offerings, all the beings are making prostrations. You're rejoicing in this fact that you've brought all sentient beings here. You've done practices. You've met with holy lamas. You're here on a Sunday when you could be doing so many other things. Just rejoice in that fact. Rejoice in the good of all the holy beings. Rejoice in the fact that this merit field is here to shine the light on the world, to shine, to kind of make the darkness go away. Rejoice in all the good that Khyentse Geshe Wandak done. Think about what His Holiness the Dalai Lama has done. Sit back and rejoice. Lama Tsongkhapa said it's rejoicing is the greatest thing in the world because it's so easy to do. It's so easy just to think about, wow, look what Jeffrey Hopkins did in his life. And he's in his 80s and he gets up every morning at 5:30 and then 6:30, by 6:30, he says, I'm in my chair translating. Still. Wow. And this Gen Wangyal, who started all of this with Robert Thurman and Jeffrey Hopkins, passed away 40 years ago. That's the kind of impact meeting with a spiritual teacher has. We see the impact that these beings have made because they met with a pure, holy guru. Rejoice in that. Rejoice in the good of all these gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas, and realize they're at work in our lives in ways we couldn't even imagine. Rinpoche was at work giving us little tidbits that maybe in 20 years, if we're still lucky enough to be alive, will cause us to have epiphanies. So fortunate. Rejoice in that. And then requesting that they remain. And we know that the Buddhas, that have passed, people like Khyentse Geshe Wandak can emanate. Bodhisattvas can emanate. They don't even have to be Buddhas yet. So we're requesting them, please teach, turn the wheel of Dharma, and then saying the next step in treating, begging them to stay in this world. Begging them. So we're always creating this firm connection in our mind that's as strong as a diamond to these beings. We're not just doing a 7-limb prayer to just say, or doing a guru puja, 1,000 miles an hour so we can just get through it, or say the prayers really fast just to get through them so we can get to the teaching or get to the real stuff or get to lunch. No, these are things that are supposed to be connecting us so deeply to the beings and allowing us to accumulate merit, increase our merit, and purify our misdeeds. That's what the 7-limb prayer does when we look at the commentaries. It's a purification and accumulation and a way to increase our merit. So every time we do this, we're increasing how connected we are to these beings. And then we dedicate at the end of the 7-limb prayer all this incredible work that we just did to becoming a Buddha, to achieving fearlessness and infinite happiness so that we could become the most reliable guides in the universe. That's why we're doing this. We're not doing this because, oh man, I should really be doing something spiritual on a Sunday. That's what everyone else is doing, so I better do something. No, we're doing this to increase how connected we are, so that when we die, if we aren't Buddhas, because that's our goal, to become Buddhas, we'll pick up where we left off and keep marching towards Buddhahood. And we won't be in a holding pattern or in a walking backwards pattern and have more to have to purify. We'll be moving towards that goal in our future lives. But the only way we can do that is if we, on our deathbed or at some point in our lives, have this feeling in our heart of, wow, this is a worthy field to make prostrations to make offerings to, that I could acknowledge my downfalls to, that I could rejoice about myself and all the holy beings in front of, and I could request to teach, and I could beg them to stay here, and I'm doing all of this so I could become a Buddha. May I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And then when we look at the 6 preparations, when we look at, setting up, cleaning the room and arranging images of enlightenment, and then making offerings that you've obtained nicely, and then, getting into a posture that's conducive to meditation, and then imagining the merit field in the space in front of you, and then offering, as we are, a 7-limb prayer. After that, you make further supplications. And after your dedication in the 7-limb prayer, the 6th step of the 6 preparations is further supplications and sometimes a mandala offering. So it's saying, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. That's a big thought. So now let me get more specific. May I understand the teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity. May I realize guru devotion. May I realize death and impermanence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're asking, just as in the source of all my good, bless me to perceive this. May I be blessed to understand this. Any obstacle to me not understanding this, I'm saying it out loud. I'm making supplications, and hopefully the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas can intervene, can teach me more, or can help me in some way to understand these things that I will need to understand to be able to realize that big one. May I become a Buddha. You don't just become a Buddha by saying, may I become a Buddha. It's just like putting a drop of water from a bucket in the ocean, it won't be extinguished, but that's great. But in order for you to get to the state of Buddhahood, to the other side of the ocean of samsara, it takes all of these steps, step by step by step. And if you engage in them, it's a guarantee that those steps will lead to Buddhahood. And that's the amazing part of this. So that, without further ado, let's move on to just the 7-limb prayer part of the King of Aspiration prayers. Is it easy? It's just the first page to like the 4th or something. We're gonna screen share what does it begin with? The King of Aspiration prayers, Samantabhadra's aspiration to good actions, Anchu Molan, and then it says in the language of India, right in the beginning. It's just the first page through the 4th, I think. Oh, sure. We've got it. We're learning more and more technology as we go. So anyone who's on any of the other applications, we're also on Zoom live with a bunch of folks. So we're trying to put the prayers up that we're going to have them eventually, all of them up. I change them all the time, so we're going to have a really skilled prayer putter-upper. But here we are. Look at it. Look at that. So just go down a little bit. That's fine. No, the other way. The other way. Keep going. Keep going. Right there. Okay. So again, with the motivation that we just talked about, not just spewing out words for the sake of saying words, think deeply about this. We have the merit field. We have all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas in the space in front of us. We have all of our lamas, the extensive deeds lineage, profound view lineage, lineage of blessings, all the deities, all the Buddhas, all the protectors, all the incredible, incredible beings, like Lama Tsongkhapa, Kirchhoff, and Joseph, all those incredible beings, imagining they're here and we're making this 7-limb prayer in their presence. And who is making it? We are, and all sentient beings that we've brought here to this space are doing it alongside of us. So it keeps us connected, keeps us in the lane of that's going to eventually end up at bodhicitta when we try to do this. And I know it's hard. Sometimes I'm doing my own practice and I'm like halfway through it and I say, I forgot to bring everybody here. But the more it's good if your mind said, oh, I forgot, because that means that you remembered. And it's never too late to bring them all here. So if you're doing your practice and it seems like you're just doing it and it isn't feeling connected, maybe it's because you didn't bring all sentient beings here. Okay. The King of Aspiration prayers, Samantabhadra's aspiration of good actions, the Sanchi Mulam from the Ganda of Yuha chapter of the Abhitamsaka Sutra. So in the language of India, it's Arya, Bhadra, Charya, Prane, Dana, Raja. In the language of Tibet, Papa, Zambo, Jubi, Molangi, Jelbo. So the translator's homage. And I'm just going to read it through. I'm not going to list the categories. Homage to Manjushri, the youthful. Okay, so I will. I think it's helpful. So first we begin with prostration. We talked about prostration just now. Physical, verbal, mental. So you'll see physical, verbal, and mental homage in this section. You'll see the prayer, you'll see the physicality of it, you'll see it all in here in the mental prostration. To all the Buddhas, the lions of the human race, in all directions of the universe, through past and present and future, to every single one of you, I bow in homage. Devotion fills my body, speech, and mind. Through the power of this prayer, aspiring to good action, all the victorious ones appear vivid here before my mind, and I multiply my body as many times as atoms in the universe, each one bowing in prostration to all the Buddhas. In every atom preside as many Buddhas as there are atoms, and around them all their bodhisattva heirs. And so I imagine them filling completely the entire space of reality, saluting them with an endless ocean of praise, with the sounds of an ocean of different melodies. I sing the Buddha's noble qualities and praise all those who have gone to perfect bliss. Amazing. So now we make offerings. To every Buddha, I make offerings of the loveliest flowers, of beautiful garlands, of music and perfumed ointments, and the best of parasols, the brightest of lamps and the finest of incense. To every Buddha, I make offerings, exquisite garments and the most fragrant scents, powdered incense heaped as high as Mount Meru, arranged in perfect symmetry, then the vast and unsurpassable offerings, inspired by my devotion to all the Buddhas and moved by the power of my faith in good actions, I prostrate and offer to all the victorious ones. And you can imagine when you're making offerings. I was watching Dzong Rinpoche. He was saying when you're making offerings, you're making offerings of music. You would see this as a mudra sometimes, but there's also mudras playing a flute, playing the guitar. So Dzong Rinpoche was literally doing this while he was reciting a prayer. And I think that's really neat because we have some musicians in the house or doing drums. You can imagine you're doing this, just make this personal, make this real, make this something that actually matters in your life. Don't make this something that's like some tradition that's, old and like it's like Socrates or something. Make it make a difference to you in your life. Not that Socrates doesn't make a difference to someone, but you know what I mean. This isn't just like we're studying this, like we're anthropologists or something. We're trying to really make our minds change. So whatever it is, however you connect to this, connect in that way. playing the piano. I have other friends that are big piano players and teachers, Imagine you're playing the piano and offering and making offerings of all of these exquisite things in the most beautiful way. And, if you don't have your hand gestures exactly right, it'll be okay. It's okay. All the tankas aren't painted the same either. It's okay. And you'll see even the mudras by some lamas are different. Sometimes lamps are like this. Sometimes lamps are like that. So I can see why maybe this one, lost favor in the West. All right, let's keep going. Confession. Whatever negative acts I've committed while driven by desire, hatred, and ignorance with my body, my speech, and also my mind, before you, I confess and purify each and every one. So we see purify each and every one. So it's inferring that you're doing the four opponent powers. Like you can't, you're now making a confession, and we know that in confession you have power of basis, power of regret that you can do in terms of the four opponent powers we talked about last week, the power of relying on an antidote and power of commitment. So that's how you would purify. You're confessing and purifying in this prayer. This prayer is loaded, by the way, with all the Lam Rim. If you start to really read it and look into it, and you're willing to keep an open mind and say, okay, I can see how the Lam Rim fits in there, you will really see it. And Lori pointed that out to me when we were first reading it. She said, it's all in there. And I was, at first reading it through saying, well, not really, well, it is, but then it is. If you look at what's being aspired to and what it takes to get to that goal, it's all there. Rejoicing with a heart full of delight, I rejoice in all the merits of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Prachika Buddhas, those in training, and the Arhats beyond training, and every living being throughout the entire universe. So they're all here, all the beings that aren't sentient and all beings that are sentient, we've brought here. Every living being. You who are like beacons of light shining throughout the worlds, who pass through the stages of enlightenment to attain Buddhahood, freedom from all attachment, I exhort you, all you protectors, turn the unsurpassable wheel of Dharma. Keep teaching. We know that we need to keep learning. We know that this self-grasping ignorance is heavy duty, and that just a couple of books we read about how to combat it aren't going to be enough. We have to keep receiving teachings and keep refining our wisdom, keep refining our knowledge, keep hearing techniques that will help us to connect to these teachings in a real way. And the only way we're going to do that is if we request these teachings to keep going, because we know that one of the stories of Buddha passing is because the requests weren't being made. There didn't seem to be this need, these requests. So I know this is a story, but just think in these terms. We have to ask. The major part of getting teachings is asking for the teaching, requesting the teaching, showing we have interest and want to continue to hear this teaching. The teachers may eventually say, I don't know if anybody wants to hear this teaching. I'm not sure. I can't be sure. Maybe I should go sit in a cave, right? Maybe it would make more sense in terms of personal development. Maybe it's enough already. So we have to continue to request these teachings and do it as much as possible for the turning of the wheel of Dharma, because we know how rare hearing the Dharma is. We know it's not a thing that is just going to just commonly happen. Lori's daughter came home from college and says we're coming up to 9 billion now human beings. So we're going to have, instead of 8 billion, we're going to have to start saying 9 billion. And we in the West, I guess, consume so much, and we're just so materialistic and needy that when we look at pollution, they count us as 2. Wow, really? We look at our indulgence and our kind of crazy mind in the West, and we see that we've needed so much and we've caused so much damage that our consumption is like 2 humans when we're looking at it in terms of consumption in terms of the environment. I'm not an environmentalist, but it's something I just heard, which was quite interesting, and I immediately related it to the Dharma and to the fact that our minds are so addicted to having this and that, and so insatiable and so unsatisfied, and that the more we get, the more we need, and we need so much because we had so much that we count as 2 now. Wow, that's some selfishness. That's selfish, and imagine what it's going to take to combat that. If that's what's ingrained in our minds, really wild. Joining my palms together, I pray to you who intend to pass into nirvana, remain for eons as many as atoms in this world, and bring well-being and happiness to all living beings. And now we're dedicate. So that was entreating to not pass into nirvana, requesting the Buddhas not to enter nirvana. Now we dedicate. With what little virtues I have gathered through my homage, through offering, confession, and rejoicing, through exhortation and prayer, all of it, I dedicate to the enlightenment of all beings. Okay, so let's now move on to the Heart Sutra. And imagining you're leading all sentient beings in this prayer. Geshe Dorje Damdu always reminds us, and it's not something that he's just made up. You just read the Lam Rim, read Pabunka Rinpoche's Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. It's exactly that. You imagine a merit field, bring all sentient beings as your guest at your bodhicitta field. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. And at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way. Seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu. No ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear, they transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangati Bodhisoha. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita, just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Another prayer that Nejung Oracle said is important for us to recite this year as many times as possible is the Heart Sutra, and also this mantra, the lion-faced deity mantra, Agasamarta Chandara Samarebe. Nejung also suggested to recite that as much as possible. So just something I heard last night, so I'm sharing it with you. It was done, I guess, at the Long Life Prayer Ceremony for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. This advice was given and written down. Kala jube nejo damba neng reje dejo ngai do jen treba lama yi bejin zit nizon gandro zo la jazelo aga samara jasandara samara abe aga samara jasandara. Aga samara deshandara samara beti ata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoha papa gonju zonji gai dembedoji she lobodoji mebodoji shewadoji dagi baji mede beja danji she dingorye zoha girin donya jeje shewadan midun bejendan dewadan Tomba Dunjin Bonzon Zonjoji Dashi De Jan Den Da De Lejo. Now I'll make a mandala offering as a request for teaching, request to the teacher, but we know that the teacher is only teaching because of the holy lineage that traces back to Buddha Shakyamuni. So we're really, this request for teaching we're making to all of the lineage. This beautiful, beautiful, perfect universe we're offering. Beautiful, perfect beings in it. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. Zaji to me roll yeah, I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Yedam Guru Rana Mandala Gam Niradayami. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sanje Jodan Zoji Jonala, Janjo Badu Dani Jazuji, Dagi Jije Jibe Zonanji, Drola Benji Zanje Drubaju, Sanje Jodan Zoji Jonala, Janjo Badu Dani Jazuji, Dagi Jije Jibe Zonanji, Drola Benji Zanje Drubaju, Sanje Jodan Zoji Jonala, Janju Badu Dani Jazuji, Dagi Jije Jibe Zonanji, Drola Benji Zanje Drubaju. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the Immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you are attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, there's no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. May this teaching be heard and understood in the language of all beings, just as it says in the Sanju Malon. All right. Hope everybody's great. I hope that your mind was virtuous this week, today, this minute. I hope it's virtuous. If it's not, fix it, because we can firmly face and avert it right at this very moment. And we can kind of, if we're not listening very well at this moment, because, maybe Jeff's just still, he's talking about the same thing again. Maybe let's just open, our mind and make it so we're a vessel that can be entered into, and we're not, we're paying enough attention that we're not going to forget everything, and that, your mind isn't corrupt by things that are, our minds get corrupted by, that make it so we can't hear this stuff so well. But we have Kala here. Everybody on Zoom can't see, but she's decided to join as my back support. She must know my back hurts. So she's here getting some imprints. So we have, we have a being from the animal realm joining us today in person, not just in mind. But yeah, I was thinking it was funny when I was going through the limbs of offering and thinking, like, whoever knew that air guitar was going to be something that really played later on for spiritual practice. Anyway, but really try to make these teachings not dull and dry and broken. And because once your heart, it says, is hardened by the Dharma, it just becomes this rigidity, like, I know what suffering is, and I'm ignorant, and these beings are all like this too. They're like me. And it doesn't seem like there's an openness or a way out for some folks once they get to that point. I've seen it time and time again. People who have much more intellectual knowledge about the Dharma than I do, but they become just so rigid with information at times that they've never really let in their heart completely. And it started out that they believed it so much and were so inspired and enthusiastic. And then somehow it's just turned into an exercise of gathering information. And Pabunka Rinpoche says that you can memorize everything the Buddha ever said and all the pendants ever said, and you may believe it, but if you don't really analyze it and you don't make it part of who you are, you don't bring it to a point of inference where you've really looked at this information, you can start taking steps backward from correctly assuming consciousness to doubt. And then doubt, the three types of doubt that's tending towards true things. So you'd probably land there like, I'm not sure, but it's probably true. And then you go to equal doubt, like, I don't know, I'm not sure if it's true or not true. And then you go to the doubt that tends towards wrong view, and you say, it's probably not true, probably not. And then you land right in the lap of wrong view. And you started in such a good place. As Geshe Dorje Damdu would say, you were riding a stallion and you fell off onto a donkey somehow. So try your best to not get hardened. Take the simple topics and make them matter in your day. That's just if I get to give any advice in all the years I've been studying Dharma and been really trying to make this part of my mind, even when my mind was fighting it like a boxer, I've really tried. The one piece of advice I can give you is take each of these stanzas you find, if it's in the Source of All My Good or in the abbreviated stages of the path or chapters in the Lamrim Chemo, and make them who you are somehow. Make it relatable to you so that you actually at that time of death have something to carry forward that isn't a piece of crap. Really, really something, a mind that isn't just full of just awfulness. Try to make these teachings, make it so you have something to carry forward, that they say the deeds that are white and dark, very crappy and good. Make sure that you have something to carry forward that's virtuous, that's positive. And if you don't allow these teachings to kind of really get into your soul, I know we don't have soul, but like, what I mean, your spirit, who you are, who you identify as is, I'm really this Jeff person. Make it this Jeff person who really tries hard to have these teachings matter, because it's so obvious that the beings who they matter to and have put them into practice are so special. And so much more special in terms of the way they interact with unfortunate circumstances versus the way I interact with unfortunate circumstances. I'm learning how to transform them into a path, but it's very, very hard. And if we don't practice it and fail a lot at it, but not get discouraged by our failure, understand our failure, of course we're going to keep failing. We have to stay on the horse, or we're always going to fail. We're always going to make mistakes, because since beginningless time, that's exactly what we've been doing. So we can't let our errors, when we're supposed to be perfect Dharma practitioners, get in the way of us keeping going. Because it's so easy to do that. It's so easy to hear about all these qualities that Buddhas have and so forth, and think that like, if we're messing up on some of the smaller things, then we're just not worthy. And that's actually a type of doubt that's non-virtue. Because when we have ego, when we can say we're the greatest, the pride, but pride is always also we're the worst. Yeah, we're so bad, we can't do this. No, Buddha says you have Buddha nature. So that's pride. That's pride talking. An enlightened being, beings like Khenser Geshe Wandak said, all beings will be Buddha, and that everybody's minds can transform. And even Chuddapantaka, who was one of Buddha's students, who couldn't memorize a line, was able to practice certain things that a guru, Buddha in this case, a pretty good one, taught, and go from a state of not even being able to think about the Dharma for more than a few words to arhatship. So we are no different than that. And we can't allow a few mistakes in our life or a wavering from commitments to make us say, oh, it's over. It's over for me. Maybe next life. I hear people, literally Dharma practitioners, like who've been Dharma decade practitioners who've given up on this life, literally. And they're like, well, hopefully I have some imprints. You know, I've got some wampum, spiritual wampum, hopefully that I'll carry forward. I know I won't get it in this life. But they obviously aren't listening to the teaching where the old gentleman came up to Shariputra, I think, and said, sometimes the story is different, but said, I want to be ordained. And Shariputra said, you don't have enough virtue. You don't have enough imprints to become ordained. I talked about it right at the beginning. But then he went to go drown himself because he thought to himself, I've given up. There's nothing more I can do. I want to be ordained. I want to be, become a monastic and, this great being. Who's totally realized, who's seen emptiness, is telling me I don't have, what it takes to go really much more forward. And what I believe to go forward is to become ordained. So he goes to actually drown himself. And the Buddha, out of love, compassion, and omniscience, shows up and says, Shariputra is not a Buddha, or whoever, Mahakashapa, whatever the story goes. One of Buddha's other students who was very realized, an arhat probably, said, you can't do this. But Buddha said, they're not omniscient. They're in the hero solitary realizer path. They aren't Buddhas. They haven't removed the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience like I have. And I can see your potential. I can see what you've done in your previous lives. And I can see that you have exactly what you need in order to be ordained. And Buddha ordained that gentleman. And he, I think, became an Arya, an Arhat, before he died and was ready to drown himself. So we have to not be that person who gives up, who says, well, maybe better luck next time, or oh, I can't possibly see emptiness in this life. Oh, that's not possible. So I'm just going to hope for later on. That's not listening to what Buddha said. That's listening to you. Since beginningless time, have been saying the wrong thing. Listen to what Buddha said. Buddha says there's all the hope in the world. You're a human basis. You've met with, gurus. Now we're getting to 9 billion people, I guess. How many of them met with Khenser Geshe Wandak? How many of them know or who the Dalai Lama is? As the Dalai Lama gets older, you run into younger generation. They never even heard of the Dalai Lama. Never even heard of him. Really, we're in a very small group of people who are so fortunate. And don't give up on yourself because your mind is, involved with pride. So strange, right? You have so much pride, you give up. What? Yeah, it's a kind of pride. It's a kind of pride that you think you're the best, you think you're the worst. And the kind of doubt that says, oh, that's a non-virtue too. Oh, I'm not good enough. I doubt myself. Well, the Buddha doesn't doubt you, and the Buddha's omniscient. So enough already out of your deluded mind that since beginningless time's been wrong. That's why we rely on the Buddha, because the Buddha is the only reliable guide in the universe, because even this being who was Buddha's student, who had seen emptiness and was so far on the path and probably an arhat, hadn't removed the obstructions to omniscience, so didn't know exactly how to help. But the Buddha, who knows exactly how to help, tells us there's hope for every one of us, and we've met with the Dharma. We have the 8 leisures. It's amazing that we have this. So what I wanted to do today is just kind of take a peek at what we've talked about this year in terms of an outline. Not going into too much detail, but here's the mirror of the Dharma. And then we're going to, after the outline, going to read the last part of the small scope in the Lamrim Chemo that tells us what's the measure of if it's working. So let's look at these topics. Let's see as we read them, how we relate to them, how much we think we've realized them in our mind, how much we believe in them. And then we'll see what once we land wherever we all personally land, because everybody's continuum's different, let's read what Lama Tsongkhapa says is the measure. And I think that's a good way to do this. So we know that the major outline of the Lamrim Chemo is 4. The greatness of the teacher, greatness of the teaching, how to listen to and explain the teachings, and how to lead students through the actual instructions. We've gone over that a lot. We know we talk about Atishan, we talk about the extensive deeds and profound view lineage of blessings and so forth when we talk about the greatness of the teacher. The greatness of the teaching is that it combines all of the, as Lama Tsongkhapa says in the Lamrim Dudun, the abbreviated stages of the path, which is just so amazing. We see that through Nagarjuna and Asanga, banners unto all humankind, ornaments amongst the wise ones of the world, was transmitted the sublime Lamrim teaching, fulfilling all aspirations of sentient beings. It is the wish-fulfilling gem, being the confluence of 1,000 streams of teachings. It is also an ocean of eloquent speech. So that's the greatness of the teaching. It's all there in stages for us to practice. And then how to listen to and explain the teaching. We don't want to have the 3 pots. That's first of all how we should listen. We should look at ourselves as we're ill. We're under control of ignorance. We're sleeping. We think we're wide awake, but we are not. We're sleeping in ignorance. We look at ourselves as ill with the afflictions, the attachment, hatred, ignorance, all comes from self-grasping ignorance. We're so ill. We have this. And we look at the Buddha or the teacher like a doctor, and at the Dharma like medicine. But that's great. Are we going to take it? That's how you listen to the teachings. Are you taking it? And it all circles back to the pots. Are you taking the medicine? Are you listening? Are you kind of listening? Are you listening in a corrupt way? Really? This is all one big instruction for practice. And as you start to see this, I promise you, goosebumps, your hair raises up. They say that happens with emptiness, but I promise you, when you start to see how all of this is interconnected and how the higher teachings reinforce the lowest teaching of all, it just becomes mind-boggling. And it's really important that we start to, when you read a beautiful poem and you feel like, wow, that's amazing. When you look at the body of the Lamrim, that'll really start to happen if you're looking at it in a way that you're taking the medicine. You're listening correctly. You're really trying to apply these things. You're taking the medicine. And you're seeing that these teachings are so incredible. Buddha Shakyamuni was so amazing and so reliable and made these teachings always remain. You're part of that. I'm part of that. Making these teachings available, making these teachings remain. It's dependent origination. If nobody has this Dharma in their mind, the teachings aren't here. By you practicing, by you taking the medicine that is the Dharma that the Buddha prescribes, because you're ill, you're allowing the teachings to remain in this world. Because it's not something out there. The teachings are here. They're what allow our minds to transform. Nothing externally is becoming a Buddha. Maybe everything transforms, right, into a Buddha land. I'll give you that. But internally is what is our mind. It's our mental consciousness that is the Buddha nature we're talking about. It's not something out there. The Buddha nature is our mental consciousness. The emptiness of inherent existence of our proliferating Buddha nature, technically. That's the natural Buddha nature that we possess. And because it's empty of inherent existence, it can proliferate. So amazing. If we know this and we can really get to know this well, you won't operate the same way on a daily basis. You won't, and if you start to waver, if you start to be really an offie, as we used to say, they're a real offie. If you start to be offie in terms of the Dharma, you'll catch it. But if you are not saturating yourself with this stuff, or if you give up, you're catching it just kind of seems to float away. And just see, it seems to be, it floats away. I don't, I'm just so grateful that I have some sort of imprints that I just kept going. Who knows, like why? I mean, there were times where it wouldn't have seemed like it made sense based on my lifestyle that I was going, but I was still going, you know, I hadn't given up. Don't give up. Key. So, and then we get to how to lead students through the actual instruction. So that's what we focused on. We talked about all of it this year, but how you lead students through the actual instructions begins with the teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity, and begins with relying on a spiritual teacher, because you have to have a qualified teacher who's qualified to explain what the reliable guide said. They don't have to be a Buddha, but they have to be saying what the Buddha said. That is the key. So is the teacher someone who's saying what the Buddha said? Do they know enough to say it? Do they have are they calm enough to have looked at it enough to really say it, right? There's so many things, the 10 qualifications of the teacher. So, okay, so if you have a teacher, then Lama Tsongkhapa says, all right, I'm going to give you a little taste of how you meditate. I'm going to give you the big taste of it in the section where we get into special insight, calm abiding and special insight, but you're going to need to know what to do with this stuff I'm talking about before that. So he gets into a real cursory understanding of how you get rid of excitement and lethargy and dullness, and the 6 preparations that we talk about, you know, how you get prepared, how you actually start a meditation session. And then Lama Tsongkhapa says, now it's time to tell your mind what to do. Now that you've, you know, arranged an altar and cleaned your room and put offerings out, and you've gotten to the Vairocana posture, and you've imagined the merit field, and you've made a 7-limb prayer, and now you've made further supplications. Now it's time to get down to some business. Like that seemed like enough already. That's just the preliminaries to get ready to do some practice. And then what kind of practice are you doing? Well, hopefully you're doing a glancing meditation to kind of look over the stages of the path, but then honing in on where you actually are and what you need to work on so that you realize it, because we know that you have to realize A, then B, then C, then D, not fully. Some of them help each other to get realized. But just disregarding entire portions because they're not as comfortable to meditate on is the wrong way to look at it. And if you look at the new book on the Swift Path, I think, by Panchen Lama on the Lam Rim, it just came out. There's an incredible introduction that talks about buffet Buddhism, talks about how as Westerners, we find things that we cling on to. We like the Buddha, what the Buddha said that we like. You know, we came from some religion we didn't like. And then we find something the Buddha said we do like, and we kind of cling on and just do those kind of practices, but don't do the kind of introductory things where we have to kind of taste our own awfulness, taste what's so awful about cyclic existence and really become convinced of it. So my other suggestion is do not dwell in the, I'm a deity, and like you haven't thought about the Four Noble Truths, but you're doing deity, you want to know all about how to do highest yoga tantra. And you want to know about, well, what exactly, when I generate myself, and then I'm imagining the light rays going from here to there, you know, and you're just making a video game in your mind. And it isn't from the basis of compassion that can only come from the basis of renunciation. There's no way to do deity yoga without generating the deity from, you know, this loving bodhicitta and emptiness. I mean, that's how you do the practice. That's the practice. And then the practice centers all around, you know, various types of meditation on emptiness and giving sentient beings goodness, you know, the 4 purities, purity of abode, everything around you is pure, purity of the body, you are, purity of your enjoyments, and purity of your enlightened activities. This is what differentiates Sutra and Tantra. But to do any of that, and make it not just imagination playing, it has to be grounded in renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness. So please, 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 in order to get bodhicitta, bodhisattva activities and the 6 perfections and the 10 perfections, these are great, but they're not real until you're unbiased. And you don't become unbiased until you recognize that all sentient beings have had these relationships with you, and thinking about this beginningless lives and thinking about what the problem is. And the only way you can really understand the problem is to understand your problem, because your problem is their problem. Their problem is your problem. So important to have this foundational practice. So we realize the teacher, Lama Tsongkhapa, gives us a taste of how to meditate and dispels, kind of things about meditation. Like there's some misconceptions out there, like just empty your mind. That's it. That'll be good. And then that's all you have to realize. Conceptuality is your enemy. That's a big one. And it's floating around out there. Let me tell you, I know people who've been practicing for years that left this sort of thing and said, conceptuality is my enemy. I'm just going to try to get to that space. Just going to get to awareness. What does that even mean? I'm going to just watch my mind be awful. And then somehow I'm not going to do anything about it. Just going to watch it be awful. It's going to be okay that it's awful. And then I'm going to get up and somehow that's going to change my day for the rest of the day. No antidote, no understanding of application of any of the pure things Rinpoche taught that we needed to do immediately to push them away from our mind. Not that this the idea of calming down and there aren't benefits to it, but if that's it, that's your path, just emptying, Lama Tsongkhapa tells you 5,000 times why that's not going to work. We're so fortunate to have such skilled lasers that have taught us this information and that we have all of these texts to refer to. And that when you start to hear some things that sound more appealing from a worldly perspective, they're nonsense because that it's illogical and that we have to deal first in conceptuality to get to non-discursive awareness. It says it right in Chandrakirti's text. And Chandrakirti is recognized as the master of Madhyamika by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama keeps a couple of books right next to him, Madhyamika Avatara by Chandrakirti and the Bodhichara Avatara by Shantideva. And he told Geshe Aga to make, to turn the pages black of Shantideva's book with his fingers. That's the kind of teacher that makes sense. This makes sense. So then, where do we land from there? We get rid of the misconceptions about meditation. So we know what to moving forward to do and not to do. So it started with a topic about the teacher and told you about the 10 qualities of a teacher. And I think there's 17 in another section. But it shows you all of the different qualities of the teacher. And then we get to relying on this. We have this human basis of leisure and opportunity, the 8 leisures and 10 opportunities, the inner opportunities and outer opportunities. When we look at opportunity, and we see that we have this chance to become a Buddha from right here, from this thing that I'm hanging out in at this moment, this hotel, as Rinpoche used to say. It's like, someone asked him, are you afraid about dying or something? And he said, no, it's like going, from an old hotel that's kind of dingy and dusty into a new one. Wow, that kind of like, it'll be fine. Shows their practitioner. A practitioner looks at like, oh, I'm getting older and, if it's my time to go, I'll get a new hotel with 8 leisures again. Wow. Because you've meditated on leisure and opportunity and you've told your mind, this is the greatest thing in the world. Your mind's so saturated with it that when it's time to pass, your mind only knows that. I need leisure and opportunity. I need leisure and opportunity. I need 8 leisures. I need opportunity. Maybe opportunity will come when we meet with Maitreya. Hopefully we'll be Buddhas before then. Let's not aim for that. Let's not aim for, well, when I meet the future Buddha, that's way too long away from me. But if that's when it's going to go down, hopefully I've meditated on leisure and opportunity and I have the opportunity to be in the world where the Buddha's teaching. If it takes that long, I will have saturated my mind and I'm going to meet Maitreya. That's what this is about. This isn't about like, oh, abuse, 8 leisures and 10 opportunities. Oh, I'm not a hell being. I'm not a hungry ghost. I'm not an animal. It's about, I don't want to be either later. It's about connecting our mind over and over and over again to this path that goes until we're Buddha. It doesn't stop. We have unfortunate states that can occur. Let's try to make that not happen at least. And that's what the small scope is all about. Not ending up in a position that is leisureless, getting high status, ending up in a position where it won't be too bad, because when it's too bad, it's too hard to do Dharma. It won't be too good, because when it's too good to do Dharma. It'll be just right. We'll have met with these teachings to understand the truth of suffering, understand the suffering of suffering, suffering of change, and pervasive compounded suffering. And if we're a human, we'll be able to quickly understand that, oh, wow, all these things that I think make me happy are contaminated with maybe one verse. One verse we hear, and suddenly our whole mind is that again, because we connect to this imprint that we're making right now. This is what it's about. It's not about anything less. And then after leisure and opportunity, the Tsongkhapa is so skillful. He gives us a taste of all the scopes. Little tiny chapter on, oh, we're going to go over the small scope, which will allow you to have freedom from the lower realms of cyclic existence. Yes. But then there's this other thing you could do with this human life of leisure and opportunity, which is called get to an abiding nirvana where you have fearlessness and never have to suffer again. It's like it starts to sound even better and better, and he only gives us a little taste, because he goes through it then in great detail and says, so, I want my mind to connect to the Four Noble Truths. I want my mind to connect to the three highest higher trainings of ethics, concentration, and wisdom that are necessary in the medium scope. And wow, the only way that I'll do that in my future lives, the only way that I can, have some inkling of a connection is to do it now, is to saturate my mind with it and to understand it now. Wow, I'm going to have to know some stuff. And then Lama Tsongkhapa goes next, and you're like, well, wait. He goes, no, there's another thing you can get that's even better. You can not only have fearlessness, but you can have infinite happiness and bliss. You can become the most reliable guide in the universe. You can become just like me. Because there's, traditions that don't believe that they, can become just like Buddha. That, not everybody gets to do it. And Buddha says, yeah, you do. You all get to do it. Atisha was so kind to put this into perspective for everyone and show them, no, everyone's going to become a Buddha. Even those beings who end up in an abiding nirvana, they're going to get like a nudge from Buddha, some kind of spiritual nudge. I don't know. I don't really understand that. And they're going to then practice the Mahayana path and become Buddhas too and help us all. So Lama Tsongkhapa is so skilled to give us like this little, like I call it the brochures, the small scope here with this human basis that you should take the essence of, as Pabonka Rinpoche says in his commentary. Here's some of the things that you could do with this basis. This would be taking the essence. You could become a Buddha with this basis, and then shuts the book on all of the other scopes, but the small scope, and says, but this is what you're going to have to realize to get to that great scope. And it starts with the teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity. So it gives us a taste of our potential right at the beginning of the Lam Rim, before we even know what that begins to mean. The Lam Rim assumes we have a basic understanding of Buddhism already, but before we really know what that means, a lot of people have a basic understanding of Buddhism and can tell you what the Four Noble Truths are. But then when pushed to what that means, they don't. You have to study it in such in a way that goes through it step by step in order to really understand it. So you realize with this life of leisure and opportunity, you can do these great things. You can, get rid of the lower realms. You can have an abiding nirvana. You can become a Buddha, and everyone can. All of you can. You have a mind, right? Unless someone's listening without a mind, and that doesn't exist. You could say a tape recorder, but somebody had to press record or something, So, and then in order for it to mean anything, someone would need to listen to it back. Because it would be not something that is, changeable from its own side. It's the words that move into our mind and change our minds. So then we say, oh, yay, we're awesome. And then Lama Tsongkhapa in this says, well, be mindful that you're going to die. Awesome person. You better think about that. You have all this stuff you can do. You better hurry up because you can die and you don't know when. Everybody's going to die. Death will come and nothing can stop it. There's no George Washington anymore. Jesus Christ is gone. Siddhartha, Buddha Gautama, nowhere to be found except in the words. We have to recognize this. No one, to cheat this death is something that requires a lot of practice. So most likely we won't. And if we don't, the only thing that can help us when that time comes that we don't know when it is, that we die, is the Dharma, is what we've done in this human basis that we know is the best basis to do this from. And some tenets believe that the human basis is the only one you can get realized in. So we see how important it is for us to recognize our impermanence. And we see the subtle impermanence and the coarse impermanence. We see that we're moving so quickly, moment by moment by moment, 1,000 moments in a second, or I don't know what gigahertz. I don't know. There's a lot of moments in a second. We're moving so quickly. What are we moving towards? We make that. Our destiny is in our hands. What are we moving so quickly towards? And while we're moving so quickly, what's our mind doing? What's our mind doing moment to moment, second to second, minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year? What's our mind been doing? What have we been doing all this time? We ask ourselves. Have we been really doing what matters? That's the question we have to ask. Then we get to reflecting on future life. Okay, so if I die tonight, what can happen? Well, let me tell you the bad stuff that can happen, the worst, most awful stuff that can happen. Because Lama Tsongkhapa says, if you can't say, I don't want to be an animal, you're never going to say, I don't want to be a human. So this is why you start with getting rid of attraction to the lower realms, because it's easier. Yeah, I don't want to be in hell, a hungry ghost or an animal. That's pretty. If I could be a worm right now or a me, yeah, no, I'm going to go with next time I want to be a human. So skillful. So it says, realize like your little world you're thinking about, and like, oh, well, I'll be Jeff. I know what kind of car Jeff will have in his next life. No. Jeff may be a worm, a maggot. Do you want that? Whoa. So now you're not only going to die, but where you go, you're dictating based on your actions. So then it says, okay, who's reliable enough to be able to help me with this problem that I have about death and all of that? Well, it's the Buddha. We've established, hopefully by this point, that the Buddha is the reliable guide. So here, who can protect me from this awful rebirth in the lower realms? Well, the Buddha teaching me what to do to protect myself. So I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Buddha, the realized being, the omniscient one, the one who has no afflictive obstructions or obstructions to omniscience. The Dharma, that pure realization of cessation and truth of paths in the mind of great beings. And the Sangha, those beings who've seen emptiness directly. I'm going to go with them. I'm going to put my, whole heart and soul into what they're saying to do, because they've transcended the things that I need to transcend. They've gone to a place I want to go. And we have the section on refuge. Then it gets into it goes into a lot about refuge. You see how important it is. And then it gets into, okay, well, what's karma? What are you going to bring with you? Virtuous deeds and non-virtuous deeds. We just went through an extensive explanation of, the 10 non-virtues and the 16 virtues, or the 16 activities for high status in Nagarjuna's Precious Garland. We went over those a little bit. We see what does it mean when it says, may I not do anything, abandon what does the Buddha say? Abandon evil, engage in only perfect actions, subdue your mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. The end. So what is non-virtue? What is the non-virtue that we need to abandon? What is perfect virtue that we need to engage in? So here we're learning it in a very, very, coarse way. What are the things that we can do? What are the 10 non-virtues? What's the starting point? And when I do make a mistake, last class, when I do screw this up, which seems entirely, but there is no screwing it up entirely, because your consciousness is going to go on forever. And everybody becomes a Buddha. So this oh, now I've done it again. Well, you did it again a bunch of times. So, all right, now are you doing it right this second? No, you're regretting it. So you're starting at a place that's great, regret. You can get the 4 opponent powers cranked up right now. And that's that was the last teaching that we gave. Teaching on the 4 opponent powers. How to actually, now that you've decided you want things that are better, you want, in terms of your next life, in terms of an abiding nirvana, fearlessness. I mean, wow, that's incredible. And then bliss ultimately is what you're seeking. Okay, Now this is what I want. So it's funny, I was reading this morning. So what's the measure of the person of small capacity? What would it look like if you had this mind of the person of small capacity, these practices that I bet 50% of folks after like 2 months kick to the curb, kick to the curb and go, I got it. It's not really a practice. It's more like information, and then like maybe the medium scope with the Four Noble Truths. All right, yeah, I got kicked that to the curb. They teach that in like some college course I was in about the Four Noble Truths. I know. Suffering, origin, cessation, path. Yep. There's an 8-fold path too in there somewhere or something. Kick it to the curb. And so what is it? Let's see what Lama Tsongkhapa says. This is the measure of the attitude of a person of small capacity. So we are wanting, unless we have all of this, we want to be a person of small capacity. We normally don't think like that, though. I think we think kind of like we're Mahayanists. Well, you become a Mahayanist when you get bodhicitta. That's the door to the Mahayana. When you open the door to the Mahayana, it means you have bodhicitta and you enter it. You're a bodhisattva. But we're so quick to say, I'm Mahayanist. Oh, I'm not a Hinayanist. And now we're going to find out what someone who's even below what we would say, I'm not a Hinayanist. Because the person of small capacity is just innate. It's not really in path. It doesn't lead to nirvana. So it's not even, it's a kind of priming. It's a primer, and it is something that's in common with what you'll need to do. But the goal of Buddha was to get out. The goal of Buddha, he gave advice on how to do better so you can get out, but the goal is to get out. It becomes path when it's something that gets you out, when it's a liberating path, leading to either an abiding nirvana or a non-abiding nirvana. Here, these are just the things you have to do to prime the pump. So let's see if we're even at the point where we can say we're a primer. Not even Hinayana or Mahayana, we're primer. Are we a primer yet? Are we a preemie? That's a word? Yeah, that's what the little kids are. Preemies, something? I don't know. The measure of an attitude of small capacity. Previously, you had an uncontrived interest in this life, while your interest in future lives has merely been an understanding that follows what others say. So previously you had that. You hadn't realized these things were so true yet yourself. So so previously you had an uncontrived interest in this life, while your interest in future lives has been merely an understanding of following what others say. So you've had a contrived, kind of a fake, correctly assuming consciousness, maybe, oh yeah, what they say, that sounds good. Rinpoche said that was great. But you really were believing in this life more than anything else. It says that if you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. Spiritual practitioner starts when you become a person who is an attitude of small capacity. When you become that person, you become a spiritual practitioner. So here's the mirror of the Dharma. Are you a spiritual practitioner? You have generated the attitude of a person of small capacity when these interests change places. You're disinterested in this life, and you're more interested in future lives. It's no longer fake. Lama Tsongkhapa is saying it's real. It's switched. You're interested, the interest that you were so interested in everything and where I got to go and I got to do this and I got to pick up the kid and I got to becomes I've got to do this so that I can in the future have a life of leisure in the small scope, so that I can be, eventually, end up at that Buddha place that I read about right after I was dispelling misconceptions about meditation in the Lam Rim, so then it says, you have generated the attitude of a person of small capacity when these interests change places and your interest in the future becomes paramount, while your interest in this life has become merely incidental. Oh, that's a heavily realized being where everything is incidental that isn't what will help me at the time of death. Everything that won't help me at the time of death is incidental. Not that you don't engage in it, not that you're not a good father, not a good brother, not a good sister, not a good son, doesn't mean you're not those things, but you aren't Your main focus isn't those things. You're doing those things because because they're part of your life, because that's what you have to do, but you're not seeing them. You're not seeing the brand new car as a way to happiness any longer. You're seeing that while your interest in this life has just become merely incidental. However, you must make this attitude stable. Thus, once it has occurred, cultivate it diligently. So it's saying that you can be really like into it, and for a week, it's not saying that, but for a week, be really like, oh, this is all these other things are incidental, and what really matters is my Dharma practice. Nothing can help me but Dharma. But it says if you don't keep cultivating this attitude, you'll lose it. Clearing up misconceptions concerning the attitude of a person of small capacity. There's a misconception. It says in the scriptures, it says that you must turn your mind away from all the excellent things of cyclic existence. Someone could misinterpret this and think that it is improper to develop an interest in high status as a human or deity, in which body, resources, and the like are excellent because it is within cyclic existence. So it's saying, like, in the small capacity practitioner, you're trying to get another one of these, a life of leisure. So you can't abandon. It's a very fine line that you're treading spiritually, because you obviously, if you get another life of leisure, are going to have to engage in the life, but you're not looking at it as the solution, the final solution. You're looking at this life as a means to the final solution, and everything that you're doing is a means to that final solution. It's just it's a shift in focus that has to happen. And then there's a response. There are two kinds of objects of interest: those which you diligently seek temporarily, and those that you diligently seek ultimately. Even persons who strive for liberation must diligently but temporarily seek excellent bodies, etc., in cyclic existence, for they will ultimately attain certain goodness through a succession of lives in high status. So we need to keep this human basis going. Take your vitamins, live as long as you can, because we need it in order to achieve the real goal. But the goal isn't what we would normally think it is: to get more money, to get more power, to look better. The goal is we're doing these nice things in our life, being nice, in order for this goal, which is the greatest goal, to be the most reliable guide in the universe, who has perfect love, perfect compassion, perfect skillful means, perfect power, etc. Further, not everything within high status, excellent body, resources, and attendance is included within cyclic existence. The most excellent body is a Buddha's embodiment as form. The most excellent resources are the riches of the embodiments realm. And the most excellent attendants are the embodiments retinue. Intending this, Maitreya says in the ornament for the Mahayana Sutras that you achieve high status as a human or a deity by the means of the first four perfections: excellent resources and body, and excellent retinue, high status. Again, it is said in many texts that you achieve a Buddha's embodiment as form by means of the first four perfections. Therefore, those who achieve omniscience accomplish a great amount of exceptional ethical discipline, generosity, patience, and the like for a long time. Consequently, they diligently seek the effects of these as well: exceptional high status with its body and so forth. The achievement of the final goal, certain goodness, is spoken of in the engaging in the bodhisattva deeds. Relying on the boat of the human body, free yourself from the river of suffering. So we're not just giving up in terms of, oh, this body's so no good, and this, I don't want that, I don't need that. We're using all of our body and resources as a means to achieve the form body and the truth body of a Buddha. That's what we're doing. When we're engaging with others, are we utilizing these techniques to really listen to them, to really have concern for them, so that we can ultimately really help them? So it's not becoming so detached that nothing matters, because it all matters in order to achieve the form body and the truth body of a Buddha. So this is the fine line that, after almost 30 years, I'm always trying to figure out, when is it right to walk away? When is it right to not walk away? When is it am I being helpful? When am I being hurtful? really these things are questions that we can only ask ourselves if we think it matters for our future. And this is what the small scope is about, is that you're starting to do everything in your world so that you can become the most reliable guide. And these interactions will be necessary. This body is necessary in order for you to become a reliable guide. As Shantideva says, you must rely on a life in a happy realm, exemplified in the verse by the human body. In the verse by the human body, the one we just read, relying on the boat of the human body, free yourself from the great river of suffering. Moreover, you must pass successfully through many lifetimes. Consequently, ethical discipline, the preeminent cause of achieving a body in a happy realm, is the root of the path. So it starts to, you see, ethical discipline, that's a perfection. The perfection of ethical discipline, that's in the Mahayana, and we're in the place of primer. So we're seeing how this is all one big ball of wax, one snowball that rolls towards the bottom of the hill, and the bottom of the hill is Buddhahood in this case, as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger because of the pre-steps that are reinforcing the later steps, and it's getting bigger and stronger, and it eventually is fully realized. Or if you look at the other way, we're digging deeper and deeper and deeper to realize that, and manifest, grow into Buddha, our seat of perfection. However you want to look at it. Then there's another misconception. Moreover, you need a body in a happy realm that is fully qualified. For even if you have achieved the path, you will make little progress with a body that is not completely qualified and only possesses good qualities to some extent. For this, it's not enough to partially observe the fundamental trainings of novice monks and the like. You must strive to maintain the fundamental trainings of monks and so on in their entirety. So you want to become perfectly ethical. That's the goal eventually, is to become more and more aware of yourself and your relation to ethical behavior. And then there's a misconception. Some say that if maintaining ethical discipline is the purpose of achieving a rebirth in a happy realm, you can achieve this even by a one-day vow. So why become a monk or a nun, which is a difficult life with little purpose? Others say that if the purpose of vows of individual liberation is to become an arhat, why become a monk and lead a life which is difficult and of little purpose? Rather, we should value a life as a lay practitioner, for you can also become an arhat in such a life. And besides, you can't become a monk until you reach the age of 20. So it's just a bunch of excuses, basically, about why you can't practice and why you shouldn't become ordained. And this isn't like a selling point. We know we can become a Buddha, as Milarepa did as a lay person. But this is just showing that, may I aspire to have perfect ethics. May I be able to keep an ethical behavior which is perfect. Because when we look at, the monks, they're celibates, and they don't engage in sexual contact. Well, newsflash, everyone, highest yoga tantra is not no emission. It's very connected, very, very connected. Think about it. Understand these claims to be great nonsense from persons who do not understand the key points of the teaching. Rather, strive to maintain the fundamental trainings completely, gradually assuming the higher vows while using the lower ones as support. This concludes the explanation of training the mind. Training the mind in the stages of the path that are shared with persons of small capacity. It's just like a lightning bolt of Rinpoche. We're so fortunate that we met with qualified teachers and we can continue to meet with qualified teachers. And Rinpoche reinforced this so much. And I know he'd be so pleased that, after he passed, we had the courage to look at this all again. We didn't just say, our rabbit's foot, our person that we depend on for our practice has left us. This person that was able to give us little, maybe even sometimes like little things he put into our minds. And when they left, there's no more things he can put in our mind. So our practice is over. We've had the courage to carry on. We have to carry on. Rinpoche said in the last few teachings, if you remember, it's okay to go get initiations from other teachers. It's okay to go get this instruction, this transmission from other teachers. I was like, why is he saying this? Because I was in denial about Rinpoche's mortality, but not real, I was in the weeds with it. So that's the teaching for today and the teaching for our lives. It's shouldn't just be Sundays and Thursdays and I'm so can make myself such a mess. I decided I'll just take a class every day and then it won't just be Sundays. So if you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. Okay, so we know that's the small scope. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. This is talking about the renunciation we learn about in the medium scope. And then if you're attached to your own self-interest, there's no bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is the entrance to the Mahayana, the entrance to the teachings for beings of great capacity. And to do anything about your renunciation or bodhicitta, you have to have the correct view of emptiness. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. So may we all realize how to abandon this life. As the Tisha would say, throw this life away. It's cooked. It's pre-baked. Start to look at what will really matter, what will help you at the time of death. Then recognize that you want to get out of this thing altogether. And you want to not only get out of this thing, get out of all your fears altogether, but why don't you fulfill all of your needs too, and all sentient beings' needs at the same time, and get bodhicitta? And you know what? To fulfill your own needs, or to get fearlessness or infinite happiness, you need the view of emptiness. So fortunate that we can articulate this in any way. How many people could articulate this in some way? And it's not because I have some special quality. It's because I sat next to a teacher who could articulate it and listened and had enough of my pots in order through repetition. I was lucky. I could have some messed up pots a lot. I translated so many teachings that, there were, I had a lot of shots to get it right. Let's do a Thanksgiving mandala offering. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of these teachings and of all sentient beings, in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Zandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Any mistakes that I made, I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't intentionally make any mistakes. I wasn't motivated by a way to deceive you. As it says, we have to make sure our teacher, number one, isn't motivated by money or for some reason and giving you something that isn't exactly correct because of a mal motivation. So there's none of that going on, I promise. But if I, out of ignorance, made a mistake, may any mistakes be purified. In my mind, any mistakes that you've heard, just leave, and if you knew I made them, you threw them out, I hope, because you're cutting and rubbing. You're checking the teacher. You're seeing, that this stuff conforms with what the Buddha taught. So if any of those mistakes were made, let's purify them with Vajrasattva's mantra. Vajrasattva, who's inseparable from our root teacher. Our teacher's inseparable from the Yidam's inseparable from the teacher. So Vajrasattva, imagine, is Khentsur Geshe Wandak, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, whoever you feel is inseparable from the Yidam. And we'll imagine that white light rays and nectars turn into homes and transform our body into pure body. Red light rays and nectars transform into ahs and purify our speech, and blue light rays and nectars transform into hums and purify our minds. Om benza sato samayama nupalaya, benza sato zeno batishta, thither me baba, sutokayo me baba, supokayo me baba, anuraktu me baba, sarvasiddhi me pracha, sarvakama sucha me, kitam shriyam kuruhum, ha 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 ho, bhagavan, sarva tathagata, benza mame mukha, benza bava, maha samaya safa ahom ve. I didn't have a bell and dorje, but I tried to do some guitars and keyboards and stuff for everybody. All right. And may Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings remain in this world until there's no more need for them, because everybody has bliss and fearlessness. So Mi me zewe tuchin chenrezi, Jeme chembe wombo jambe on dipple molly jimsa sawe da kanchin kepi suchin sokapa luzan drapi shala so de. May we always be connected to and protected by Paul Dan Lama, who Rinpoche said is our protector deity, the wrathful emanation of Tara, who I think you've heard the name of once or twice from Kensur Geshe Wandak. The last 2.5 years of his life, I think he gave the initiation every month. Oh, Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Kalarajem Rama Wachadaja Dunjo Rulu Hunjo Honjo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Kalarajem Rama Wachadaja Dunjo Rulu Hunjo Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Kalarajem Rama Wachadaja Dunjo Rulu Hunjo Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Kalarajem Rama Wachadaja Dunjo Rulu Hunjo Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Kalarajem Rama Wachadaja Dunjo Rulu Hunjo Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Kalarajem Rama Wachadaja Dunjo Rulu Hunjo Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Dunjo Kalarajem Rama Wachadaja Dunjo Rulu Hunjo. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land, surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. Angri Rawe Gorwe Jin Yandi. And on dewa malu jongwe ne jenrezi wan denzin yatsoi shapezi de badu den jorji. And now we'll say Rinpoche's prayer. A complex yogi poses as a simple monk. Homage to Kensur Geshe Wandak, our precious spiritual friend who is inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music purified by Om, Om. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you, who placed the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like Atisha, who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. The teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears that elucidated the teachings for beings of 3 capacities. Now that sound has stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all of your teachers passed away and understood this sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. The sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us in all of our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts and crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, so they know who you really are. So fortunate group of people here that could hear these words, the Lama Tsongkhapa, Lord Atisha, and Alanda Patnitz, Buddha Shakyamuni. We're so fortunate, and there's nothing missing. The only thing that's missing could be from our side, and let's fill it. Let's stop missing it, and let's get the point, because that's all the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas want, is for us to get the point and get it through our thick skulls that death is coming, nothing can stop it, and the only thing that can help us is Dharma. Thank you. Talk to you next time if we all make it.